So often people ask us why we live a plant-based lifestyle, what brought us to it, and why we use the ingredient list that we use. And I have to say, the beginning of this process was vanity based. I was getting ready to go into my 40s, and I went to go stay with a friend in San Francisco I hadn't seen in 3 years. So she told me just to walk into the house when I got there, so I did. And in the back of the house, there was a woman standing who looked just like my friend, but my friend was about to be 50. And like I said, I hadn't seen her in 3 years, and she's very fantastic looking. But, 50 says something to us. And it was like, she's an esthetician, so her face is always fantastic, but it was kind of all about her body. And she was standing in a bikini, and I just thought, does she have a niece or something? And when I got back to where she was, I was just blown away, and I was like, what are you doing? And she said, I went raw 3 years ago.
Shout out to Nanalicious.
And I just said, sign me up at that point. And so I have to admit that my entree in wasn't what it is for a lot of people. I wasn't sick. I wasn't an animal rights activist. I just was a woman who was at the end of her 30s, looking at a friend who was at the end of her 40s, and was like, wow, this looks like something I would be really interested in.
She turned me on also to raw food in San Francisco, and she actually introduced me to Willow. So she really was the impetus for a lot of change in our lives. But also, Willow, it is much deeper than that, than the vanity piece.
Oh, it is, for sure.
Both
I mean, it
had been a work in progress, like most people, for forever, and struggled with body dysmorphia.
Totally.
And lacking satisfaction in food choices, because always questioning what we're eating. How's it going to make us look? How's it going to make us feel? And we were looking for that path of least resistance, I think.
Yeah.
And the food piece.
And looking for like intense satisfaction, because I don't know about any of you out there, but I don't like to feel like I'm on a diet. That doesn't work for me. And in fact, it tends to throw me into a tailspin of obsessive behaviors.
Having been over-exercisers.
And I had a long-standing eating disorder as a young person.
Food restrictors.
Over-exercisers.
Yeah, so it was definitely coming from a vitality piece as well. Mm-hmm. Watching people being sick, not wanting to be that way as an older person, and wanting to be healthy and
wanting to look good at the same time. I mean, certain ages tend to say certain things, especially to women. And this aging piece, actually, it's kind of fantastic. It's just that sometimes it's hard to see the changes that are occurring that, that none of us is going to get out of unless we're a vampire. And frankly, I don't know any vampires.
As from a business perspective, we just approached it as being about the food versus about us, coming from entertainment and fashion, which are very vanity driven. And usually as a woman, you kind of age out a lot of times in certain industries. And what's beautiful about the plant-based one is the more vital you are, the older you are, the more of an example you are. And we were always looking for that example, and kind of became that, I guess, our own example. So work in progress every day for sure. But that's just our motivation, I think, is to feel good, basically.
It's to feel good, because when you feel good, you look good. When you look good, you feel good. It's kind of this hand-in-hand situation. And so we stepped in, we kind of just jumped right over veganism and went directly into raw food. And that was even more challenging, because there just isn't a lot. There still isn't a lot out there. And
there
this
wasn't
was
at the time, especially.
Oh, totally.
The reason we did that, the reason we did that is because a lot of the vegan food is processed, and just had some intuitive feeling behind the processed foods that didn't resonate.
Well,
no judgment.
Even in my life of eating across the board, which I did eat across the board, I still didn't eat processed foods. Even then. So it's, so I went from being a meat eater and a dairy person, and I just never thought that I was going to be able to give up dairy because I was such a cheese lover. and bread lover. But you know what I
Still.
mean? I was constantly looking for, like, there's this amazing grocery store in San Francisco called Rainbow. And that was one of my major grocery stores, that and Whole Foods. You know, those in the Bay Area, those were my places that I grocery shopped. And, you know, and Trader Joe's here and there. But
Well, in the Bay Area, there's a lot more examples for healthy lifestyle. And depending on where you're living, there might not be the access to as many healthy grocery stores or people that influence you that way. We live in Charleston now, and it's definitely not like Portland.
no.
You know,
And Portland wasn't like San Francisco. So,
Right.
you know, it's like each place has its beauties and its downfalls. And, you know, being here, we don't have quite the same access to the amazing organic produce that we had in Portland. I mean, the grocery stores there
top notch.
were just, I mean, we didn't even realize it though, being there. You know, I really didn't realize it.
I think I did because
Did you?
I lived there every day, meaning it was my outlet, going to the stores. But yeah, New Seasons especially.
Had just the most insanely beautiful produce section where when we in Portland, I wouldn't even go to Whole Foods. That would be secondary. New Seasons, their produce section was just primarily an organic produce section, and
People's Co-op.
just so gorgeous. But it was really kind of about I mean, People's Co-op is an amazing store that's been around for over 40 years now, maybe even closer to 50 now. But New Seasons, just I could go in there and get every single thing that I needed, and that produce section was just beyond. It just was a beyond amazing produce section.
And we continue to spend most of our resources on organic food and food that we make at home, which is why we're sharing it with you all, because it is our passion, and we will bypass going out and doing other things to make sure that we're really eating nourishing food that we love. We won't feed ourselves anything that we'll share with anyone else, i.e.
No, what do you that didn't come out right. It's like we wouldn't feed you anything
Oh,
that we
sorry, I
wouldn't
said it
feed
wrong.
us.
Yeah.
And so in our retail, in our business in Portland, where we had 3 locations and a wholesale business where we sold to the grocery stores like New Seasons and Whole Foods, just had to back that up there. We literally, every single thing that we put out there was something that we would feed ourselves. We never cut any corners to produce our food so that we could make more money. We did what we did for ourselves. So that
Which was
meant
organic.
no soy, no gluten, no refined sugars, all vegan,
No processed
mostly
foods.
raw, nothing processed, and that's how we did it.
And fast forward, we've changed and evolved. So we went from diehard raw fanatics to then incorporating cooked food again in a new, refreshed way. Better processes, better flours, steaming, baking, using less oils. So it was kind of, you know, like a little bit of this, but we still love our raw, absolutely. And we definitely eat cooked food too. It has a different approach to it.
Really, it does. And you know, going into this as people that weren't necessarily sick, you know, things, because
Sick in the
you know,
head.
what we would find in the business was that when we, you know, the customers that we would see daily, so many people were seeking us out because they had some sort of ailment, whether it was an allergy or you know, thyroid issues, or lupus, or MS.
A lot
or,
of young people, though,
Yeah,
were
it was
just coming
kind
by
of
it naturally.
blew my mind.
And that was what is very amazing and that we love so much, versus waiting until you're older and then you have to make changes.
And when I
you
say
don't know where
young,
to
I mean
start.
like under 35,
Yeah, exactly. Younger than us.
way younger than me.
So this is just our passion. I mean, we're still plugging away at it because honestly, I'm not really sure what else I'm supposed to be doing other than sharing information at this point.
Yeah, and it's, you know, one of the things that started to happen as well, I went through menopause. And so that began to shift how I was eating, because I was eating a pretty high fat diet with my raw food. There's lots of nuts and seeds and oils that are used in order to come up with some of these really amazing recipes. And once I hit menopause, it blew my mind. I could not take in fat the same way that I used to be able to. and my body just didn't want me to. It's like I had started eating almost half of what I was eating before, and then again, this friend that turned both of us on to raw food one year sent me the first medical medium book called The Medical Medium as a gift. And
it took a minute.
It took a minute for me to read it. It did, because I don't know what it was. I am all things woo-woo. I love all things esoteric. Bring me astrology every single day of the week. But there was something about the title, The Medical Medium, that just kind of made me step back a little bit. I don't know what that was, but I went to San Francisco for a funeral and ended up staying with that friend, and she wanted to talk about it. And she could tell clearly, even though I said I'd read it, that I hadn't. So she was like, God, you're such a liar. And so she got the book out and read the first chapter to me. And I was in. It was like I was totally in, and it opened up. It's like it really helped in this menopausal process, because I was able to see that I needed to step through some new doors, that the tools that I'd had up to that point, only some of them were going to serve moving through this new door. And so, we started to really dive into the medical medium. I mean, he since has written what, like, does he have 7 or 8 books now?
Something like that.
Something like that. And
we've poured through them, and each book, when we were ready, we would be able to take all the information in, especially the liver rescue book. That one's
really
incredible.
big.
And adopting the celery juice as a practice, it's probably been about 8 years for us now, 8 or 9.
More like 9.
And so it's been an evolution. And so I guess, the message is to not be hard on yourself or beat yourself up, because I read recently to you, Willow, about how wherever we are in life at any given time, we are at our best. Even when we think we're not at our best, every moment we're at our best. And that really was inspiring to me, because I don't always feel at my best, but if I can look at it from that way, I can be like, oh, okay.
Well, and that really brings in this whole other piece, which is mindset. And that was the other thing that really stood out to me, and is really continues to stand out to me. It's not just about what we eat and how we exercise, it's about how we think. And so that's just been this other, I think it's been like the missing link for me, is this mindset piece of being more gentle with myself and appreciating how amazing this body is, and how it's carried me for the last 58 years and just consistently served me when I wasn't even serving it. I mean, because back in the day I was a smoker. I was also a runner at the same time I was a smoker. So crazy. But just, realizing that when we've got something new that we need to accomplish, whether it's a goal in our profession, or it is a weight loss goal, or it is
A shift in
a
thinking.
relationship goal, that oftentimes the first thing that really needs to happen is just a little shift in our thoughts.
Which is why we've added in some meditation to our YouTube. We need to add more. It's part of our daily practice. It's why we're in Charleston. You can hear the soothing sounds of this southern charming oasis.
It's really
and
beautiful here.
after working so intensely for so long, we really needed that change of energy that you can't really put a finger to it. You have to feel it. And it was just purely a feeling that brought us here, so that we can just focus on slowing down a little bit, not slowing down in life particularly, but just slowing down a little bit and taking in a fresh air quality, I guess.
A fresh perspective.
Yeah.
It's like I spent 18 years in Portland after being in the Bay Area for about 15. And I just needed the sun. It's so crazy. It's like it's blowing my mind how I feel with more sunny days than gray ones. And don't get me wrong, because part of the reason that the Pacific Northwest is so gorgeous is the rain. It is part of the reason that it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. It's such an enchanted forest of an area.
It is magical.
It is magical. And at the same time, this little beachy town that we're in now, it has its own kind of charm and magic that's really helped to bring down my central nervous system.
It's a pretty
bring
wide
it down.
contrast between the two.
Oh, I would say, for
Equally
sure.
special and lovely in very different ways.
Yeah.
And
Really, really friendly here. It blows my mind how
Yeah.
friendly it is here.
the friendliness is very helpful also.
Yeah, especially when you're in someplace new trying to figure out something new.
So, yeah, our page is just to encourage you all to adopt some new practices, even if it's just one thing.
I mean,
When
that's really how it starts.
I went from a longtime vegetarian, from a teenager, maybe 14. My brother was a hunter, and there would be deers hanging from the swing set, and I was a kid, so
So
it was a little
gross.
traumatizing for me. And next thing you know, there'd be chuck roast for dinner, which I wasn't a big beef person anyway, but I knew it was that deer, and I just didn't want to eat it. So I stopped eating meat from a young age, but I still loved dairy. I loved to bake, and that's where I had freedom of expression. I come from a big family. I have 12 siblings, and cooking in the kitchen was one thing I was able to do without any restrictions, because I think it took a load off of my mom.
For
And
sure.
we weren't allowed to eat a bunch of junk food and things like that. We always had home cooked meals, so I could always count on making cakes and cookies and things like that. And even from a young teen, I was still looking for healthier alternatives. For example, I think at one point I thought Crisco was healthier than butter, which is hysterical. Using egg replacer instead of egg.
Well, that was a good one.
Yeah, I stopped using eggs a long time ago. And when I moved to San Francisco, I was still baking, and a friend and Willow and Nan too, I think, all pointed out that I should switch away from using refined sugar. So it was evolution. First it was the refined sugar. Well, first I moved away from cow's milk and went to soy, thinking that was better. And then away from refined sugars, and then away from gluten, and then away from soy. And so it was one thing after another. It wasn't everything at once, so it wasn't as much of a challenge. And when we stepped into the raw food, starting to make, Willow turned me on to almond breeze, I think. And she would get me to get almond breeze to make tea and come off of coffee and drink an herbal tea. Actually, it was caffeine.
No, it was mate
Yeah,
that we were
yerba
drinking.
mate. It was delicious. With honey. So we would have yerba mate with this almond breeze box milk you could buy off the shelf. That's another conversation. And she would buy the unsweetened, and when she wasn't around, I'd buy the sweetened one because it was tastes
Well, when
better
I
to
started,
me.
I bought the sweetened one too, but then I realized, oh, they have an unsweetened one, and I have been a honey user for a really long time.
Honey nourishes the liver. I know the vegan community doesn't like for us to say that, but
No,
it's true.
and I feel like we never used honey in any of our in any of the things that we made for our cafes or for our wholesale business, but we did always personally use honey. Both of us did.
Local honey in our tea. And even as we're cooking and
I
things
mean-
like that, maple and honey are two things that hydrate the liver.
Well,
And
they're food for the liver.
Yeah.
Not just hydration, but they're actually food that the liver really, really loves.
And if you're anti-honey, there's maple syrup, and that's great. But so moved away from the almond breeze, started making almond milk, and that was the real impetus, because once we started making it, I felt a shift. I no longer had a desire I'd already moved away from soy. Then once we started making nut cheeses and raw chocolates, and that's why I geeked out so hard. I didn't think it was a problem at all. It wasn't like I was on a diet. It was so easy. There was no looking back for me, because I
Yeah.
was getting that satisfaction that
But it
I
was,
was
and how you
needing.
felt. You felt different. And for me personally, I'd been a serious runner and weightlifter and worker outer, and then moved into yoga. And I was always, based on that body dysmorphic bullshit, there was always like this 5 pounds I couldn't drop. And it was so mind blowing to me that in my 40s, that bit of weight that I just never felt like I could drop, once we stepped into the raw food, there was no trying. It's like it fell off. And what it showed to me, because of all of my over exercising, was that it really is about 80% what we're putting into our mouths and 20% what we're physically doing.
I was an over-exerciser also, and I had shame around it because it wasn't how I wanted to spend. As I got busier in my life, turned into an adult, I knew that I couldn't keep that up. Thank God for yoga.
Yeah.
Discovered yoga, became fanatical about yoga. I'm still fanatical about yoga, but more chill. than I used to be.
Well, but the yoga now is more, we've done so much yoga. The yoga now is more based around meditation. There's so much of our yoga now is really about preparing to sit down to meditate.
And with the work that we were doing, it was very physical, lifting 50-pound bags, running around all over town, carrying coolers, things like that. So I don't have a total fair assessment in saying, oh, I don't have to work out because I'm eating this way. I mean, I was
you don't
expending
have to work
a lot of,
out.
my body really shifted into its natural state. But I'm getting older now. I'm approaching menopause, and I'm having to make changes too. And as we get older, watching other people, we realize weight training and that physical exertion is actually very important. So we've added that back in along with the yoga as a daily practice, and swimming, and making sure that our bodies are strong along with our minds.
Not so much even about how it looks, but just watching, like both of us are having aging parents, and you start to see that muscle mass and flexibility are of key importance to the aging process. Key importance.
And balance.
Well,
Did you say that? Yeah, balance. I guess balance in general, but
that really goes
balance.
with like flexibility.
Yeah. If I am going to live in old age, which who knows, I would love to be strong and of sound mind and body. And that's really our goal with why we do what we do at this point. Since we no longer have our locations, we're solely focused on our own practice and making sure that we can show other people how to do it and empower other people to do it in their own homes. And I think at the end of the day, people just want to feel like it's accessible and that they can make the changes versus it being some mountain they have to climb.
Yeah, really, it's like just starting with one thing. Like, say maybe you take out dairy. And in fact, if somebody asked me, would I stop eating meat first or would I stop doing dairy first? I would definitely stop with dairy first. And the reason that I say that is that it's so much easier to take in a lot of dairy in a day. Think about it. It's like you get up in the morning, maybe you have milk or half and half or whatever in your tea or your coffee. Then you move on in the day, maybe you have breakfast and maybe you have like, I don't know, maybe even you're making scrambled eggs. Some people put milk in their eggs when they're scrambling eggs, or you're having cereal, you're on the go, so you've got more milk there. Then you move into the middle of your day. And so maybe you have a salad and it's got cheese on it, or you have a sandwich and it's got cheese on it. So now, so far, we've had at least 3 to 4 servings of dairy in the day, and we still have, for most people that like to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then we've still got dinner, and there's maybe even some snacks in there. And
some
so,
butter on your potatoes.
Exactly. It's like, or sour cream, or more cheese, or, you know what I'm saying?
Big piece of chocolate cake.
It's really easy. It's really, really easy to have that side of things really stack up.
Well, fortunately now, thank God, there's so many really amazing food producers out there that are making stellar products. There's still a lot of room for improvement in the general scope, but you can find those vegan cheese alternatives that really taste like cheese.
Yeah.
You can find coconut yogurts and oat milks and
butter. And you know what I mean?
Miyoko's vegan butter is
seriously,
incredible.
It's like there's so many great replacements right now. And then the other thing is that once you get into this, you know, if you can have the time, then you can begin to make these things yourself, because they're really not hard. It's just a little bit of prepping and a little process.
When you can open up your refrigerator and have meals or things that you can make meals with.
Have like all the right condiments in the refrigerator.
It's really, for me, it feels exciting. I always feel really rich when we have a lot of groceries in the refrigerator.
Me too.
When we're stocked with all of our dry goods, when we have a series of different meals we can put together, fresh from the grocery store, fresh from the farmer's market. And there's something about that. It makes me feel safe. And
me too.
It makes me feel rich.
Yeah, I agree. Rich and secure is how it makes me feel.
And fortunate.
Very. I mean, and that's the other thing too. Not everything needs to be organic. And that's the other thing too. When we first stepped into this, we were not using organic. We just weren't.
Well,
I
we
mean,
never fed the public non-organic.
no, when we first started the business, everything was organic. But when we first stepped into this, it wasn't. And, you know, we were cutting corners by
We didn't know any
not
better.
using organic. And then we realized through another person that we worked with that this was paramount. And I should have been paying attention anyway because my mom has been crazy into organic for probably the last 30 years.
But in the beginning,
and that
we didn't-
had really to do with all of the autism and the some of the health issues that were happening with the next generation in our family, so my nieces and nephews.
But we didn't think about things like organic seasonings, you know, organic oils. That just felt pretty deep at that time. And once that awareness came, it all just clicked, and we never looked back from
What do you
that.
mean, organic seasonings and oils?
Say, well, in the beginning of my process, when I was cooking a long time ago, if I needed Italian seasoning, if I needed basil, if I needed coriander or whatever, just go buy McCormick's or whatever it is, you know, from the grocery store, dried seasonings. Now, of course, we'll always use fresh, obsessed with fresh herbs as
Well,
much as possible. But
once
even
in a
then,
once in a while, we're using, you know, some seasonings and
as
some
needed.
spices.
But if you can,
yeah.
of course, definitely. But if you can use fresh, then we'll use fresh.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. But even with the seasonings, they're always organic too.
Yeah.
And checking the expiration dates on them and things like that. So we do go a little bit hardcore on it, but that's just our path.
I
so.
just can't, but I can't look back at this point. You know what I mean? It's like, this is the age range, the age that I'm at right now. It's like, this is when people start really getting sick. And it's what I'm seeing. Like, so many people I know have health issues. And, you know, I feel like this lifestyle, it's not a diet for me, it's a lifestyle. And this lifestyle is part of my, it's part of my health care. So I don't
is our
really,
healthcare.
it's like, it's the biggest part of my health care is what I eat and what I think about. Those two things. And then I would say third is the physical. And actually I might switch that order up. I might actually say mindset, lifestyle, physical.
And changing your mindset is harder than you think, at least for me.
I think it's harder than changing your diet.
I think so too, because we're so programmed. It comes more naturally for me to go buy some cilantro and eat a ton of that than it does to break out of these patterns.
Like what?
Ways of thinking. How I have thought about myself, my self-worth, not putting myself first in scenarios because, you know, people think it's selfish and it's absolutely not. And being a people pleaser and feeling like things are perceived failures when actually they're stepping stones to the next, you know, when you're at a crossroads and you're transitioning into a new phase, rather than looking back at all that's been accomplished and all the amazing parts of the journey, thinking that somehow I wasn't good enough or whatever it was. But I then remember that a lot of my mindset took me away from those things into finding better things that were more suited to me at the time of my life, or, you know, whatever that looks like. But it's just nothing stays the same.
No, it doesn't.
And if we can just trust the process, then we can listen better to our inner guidance system.
Well, and we also have to remember that it's like, you know, when you're in your 50s, you're not going to be, you're not who you were in your 20s, 30s, or even 40s. And we need to be aware and ready to let go of certain things and pick up new practices. Like,
And to circle back to the why we use the ingredients that we use, because all of these things that we do help our mindset to feel better and more positive and more optimistic and more hopeful and more appreciation. It's all of those components together that help to lift our thoughts. And at least now, when I do find myself toiling in a way that's not helpful, I have practices that I know that can pull me out of it faster.
like what?
Rampages of appreciation.
Like, what does that look like?
So a rampage of appreciation is when you just go off on a tangent and just list all the things that are amazing about you and powerful and all the things that you're appreciative of. I can do one for you really quick.
Do it.
So you don't think about it, you just do it and you just go off the top of your head. I'm amazing, I'm beautiful, I'm talented, I'm inspired, I'm in love with my life, I am worthy of all good things, I am a magnet for money, I am a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. I am beautiful, I'm creative, I'm strong, I'm resilient, I'm knowledgeable, I'm smart, I'm wise, I'm kind, I'm caring, I'm loving, I'm giving, I'm sharing. I am appreciative. I have great friendships in my life. I have great relationships. I love my life. I love the sun. I love my body. I love my smile. I love my heart. I love my open nature. I love my thoughtfulness. I love my purpose. I love my talents. I love Willow. I love this life. I love these beautiful plants.
Okay, I'm going to say something really quickly. I don't know if you noticed or not, but at every point, she started with I am. And everything that we say after I am is setting out to the universe and to everybody around us what we think of ourselves. And then in turn, the universe and everybody around us treats us the same way that we're treating ourselves. So it's really, really important to
practice appreciation.
and to talk really good about ourselves. Like when somebody says to you, wow, you look great today, say thank you. Don't tell somebody why maybe you don't. You know, that was one of the things I was really, really bad at. Somebody would give me a compliment and I would tell them why they were inaccurate. And that's just crazy. It's like, why not just take the compliment?
We both still do that.
I know, but it's like, it's those things where it's like, you know,
just the awareness.
Yeah.
We do still do that.
Of course. Like,
and yet
again,
also
like
have an awareness.
works in progress.
So maybe if she does it to me and then I find myself doing it and Willow will just back up and not engage me that way, or vice versa. And that kind of signals the conversation to be over. Because it's, nobody wants to hear it. What did we hear recently? It's, as soon as someone starts complaining, you just back it on up.
Yeah,
you know, back it on
nobody
up.
wants to hang out with that. Nobody. I mean, maybe if you're in a time frame where there's something shitty going on in your life and you've got that person that you can commiserate with. But over time, if that person keeps calling you with the same ass story that's super negs, it's like you're gonna find ways to get off the phone. You're not gonna take those calls because they're a takedown. They just are. It's not fun to sit around and talk about negative stuff.
And
just
it's
like
natural.
watching the news. Do you feel good after you watch the news?
We do
Not
it.
usually.
We do it. It's programmed in, hardwired for the negative.
Yep.
However,
well, we're hardwired for the negative because it's part of the primitive brain. It's like we're hardwired that way because we don't want to consistently touch fire. So we touch fire once and we remember that. And so we're hardwired more towards the negative than we are the positive because we don't want to keep doing the things that aren't helping us or that are hurting us. But at the same time, you know, that kind of programming kind of keeps us in these patterns and in these places. So if we can just start to get a teeny bit, just a little bit more conscientious of how we speak about ourselves and how we speak about our lives and what's going on in our lives, to really slow down with the complaining and like take up the appreciation for what is already happening in our lives.
And if
it's
you
so
have
powerful.
At least one person in your life that lifts you up and that engages you in conversations that are about your dreams, about your inspirations, about things that light you up and make you feel good, nurture that relationship and keep those people close. If you do healthy things together, take walks, practice yoga, go on hikes, go to saunas, enjoy a nice meal together, talk about what you're reading, or just
pull tarot cards,
then
do some astrology.
Give those friends a call. And also, when it comes to sharing experiences about your day that aren't, because life's not always butterflies and
unicorns.
It's not that, you know.
No, in fact, oftentimes it's the exact opposite.
And it's hard, you know, and so it's natural to want to share that. I think there's a difference between sharing your experience and talking about it versus gossiping and being super negative and drowning in that experience. That's at least something that I'm looking at as I engage in these conversations with people. So...
Me too. At one point, I had a friend, she had just moved to New York. I was still in San Francisco. and she called me specifically because she wanted to know what all the gossip was. And I
a long time
remember
ago.
it was, and I was still in my 30s at this point, and I remember like laying out everything I knew, all the gossip I knew, which I knew a lot because I owned a shop and I saw a lot of people, and then I remember feeling really bad about it. And I thought, oh my God, I'm the town crier. She's calling me because she knows I'm going to gossip. And it really was this big shift of beginning to be more conscious of that and stepping back and really working on that gossipy piece of myself that wasn't, I never felt good afterwards. And in fact, I would always have
Oh,
oh
wow.
no, the palm trees just fell over. But I would have these, so now we can see how it happened last time.
Yeah.
I would have these, I would not feel good. It's like those, when you get that.
That's really anything. I mean, that's the crux of it. If you don't feel good about something, you probably shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
If you don't feel good about
And
what you're
meaning,
eating,
like-
you probably shouldn't eat
But
it.
meaning like when you get that visceral reaction, like, when you're gossiping about somebody, it's like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's like my stomach starts to hurt. It's like, it's literal, it's a physical feeling. It feels bad. And I just started really paying attention to how it felt. Oh my God!
Let me move this right here.
That's a good idea.
So,
But what about that one?
yeah, I'll get that.
Push it over by the other chair. Ah! 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 Oh my God, we're having a meltdown. Ah!
Shit. Protect the plants.
Oh my
Damn.
God, this has to go in closer.
Okay. Darn it. Let me lift this up.
Oh, look at all the dirt that fell out.
That's okay. All right. Chaos averted.
this-
So you can see how I'm
This
getting all
might-
paranoid. We might have to wrap this up here. But so you can see we kind of went all over the place. We talked about ingredients. But with our YouTube channel,
We'll pick ingredients back up at another
Yeah, I
point
mean-
because it's important. And it's one of those.
we're doing the food piece because we're very versed in it, but we're also really interested in these other topics, which is why we kind of go off on a different
Meaning,
tangent.
when she says other topics, meaning like the basic well-being. So it's body, mind, spirit.
Yeah.
So, not just working
Wellness
on our
practices.
bodies, working on our mindsets, and working on our spiritual practices that help keep our minds quieter, not as messy, not as like, are you one of those people that it's just constant? It's like this constant chatter in your mind, and the chatter that's going is like all the shit that's going on in your life, all the things that aren't working out, all the things that, just really being focused on what's not working
instead of what is.
instead of what is working.
And Abraham Hicks said that, and you just repeated it yesterday. If you have 10 things going on in your life and one of them's really positive and the other 9
Are just
are
like
not
a
very
shit show.
great, and you spend a lot of time thinking about the other 9 versus the one thing, if you shift into thinking about the one thing, then more of that one thing will appear in your life.
And it'll start to even out all the other stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, well, maybe you don't know what I mean, but give it a shot and then you will. It's because it's mind blowing. When we were running our business in Portland, I am the person where you notice in the videos, Teresa does more of the recipe stuff because I did more of the back end of the business. And so I was the person who was dealing with, with the paying of the staff, the paying of all the bills, and dealing with the accountants and dealing with the bookkeepers. I was dealing with that end of things, and it just weighed on me. And I was constantly, I would get up thinking, I would get up in the morning doing math in my head. It was crazy. And I really have to say that diving into meditation has really shifted that for me. It's really quieted my mind. And the meditation piece can just be 3 minutes a day. 3 minutes of meditation a day can shift everything. And what it also shifts is that you get so thirsty, you get so hungry for how it makes you feel. It's because you start to feel so good by not having all this chatter, this negative chatter in your mind. Just 3 minutes will turn into 7 minutes, will turn into 11 minutes, will turn into 20 minutes. That's
Sit in
meditation,
stillness,
though.
right?
That is
But
meditation.
for
just
some
sitting
people,
in
it's just
stillness.
going outside and looking at the sun, or watch the trees,
Or going for a
That's
walk
actually
around the block
meditation.
is
Yeah.
also meditation. I mean, meditation can be so many different things. It doesn't have to be this thing where you sit down and try to have some some
profound.
mystical experience. I have to admit, I've never had a mystical experience. I've been meditating for close to 10 years now, and I've never once had a mystical experience. But what has happened is this cumulative process of the quieting of my mind, which is
Chitta vritti.
beyond. It's like, yes, the chitta vritti,
So
quieting
yes,
the monkey mind.
working on our self-talk, the ways that we're feeling, the thoughts that we're having, all of these things shape our reality. And if we look at it from the approach of that we're co-creating with the universe, that everything we're thinking about comes into fruition, good or
does.
bad.
So choose
How many
wisely.
times have I had amazing things come into my life based on my crazy dreaming mind? I toil up in the sky,
I mean,
and
think-
Willow toils
I'm
down here
super
on Earth.
earthy,
I
super
am not
rooted.
earthbound, but I've also
Somebody's got to be.
through my self-talk, have created the other things that have been really painful. My feelings, my thoughts, and
I mean, think about like when Teresa tends to have digestive issues,
often.
and you know, when you start really like allowing for yourself to feel sorry for yourself around that, it just tends to get worse.
I don't feel sorry for myself for having digestive issues.
Okay, what would be the right thing? Sorry for saying that.
It's not about feeling sorry for myself for
What
having
is it?
digestive issues. I probably start worrying about what's next, or am I?
And how does that work for you?
It doesn't. It doesn't work.
What tends to happen?
I
More of the same?
First of all, I love sleeping. I mean, my brother back in the day would call me a narcoleptic, like, but
I will still call you that.
And so when I'm
If
not
she
sleeping,
just gets horizontal, she falls asleep.
I do, because I'm a go kind of person, go. And then when I lay down, that to me is time to sleep. So I don't have a problem sleeping, but when I do, it's because I'm allowing myself fear, worry, anxiety, those things like that. And then it just really sets the tone for not a good day if I didn't have a good night's sleep. Thank God last night was really great. But the last few nights before that, I wasn't having a good night's sleep. And I think part of it for me is my hormones as I'm changing into this next phase of my
I would
life.
say so. I mean, I was
So I have
just
to
reading.
give myself some grace on that.
I was
but-
just reading somewhere that perimenopause is starting as early as 35 for some women, and you know, and I would say that probably was me. That I mean, I think I probably started into perimenopause at the very end of my 30s, and then went into menopause at the very end of my 40s, and it comes out of nowhere. You've never dealt with it before. If you know, as a woman, it's like I shouldn't
People
say
think
you.
you're crazy?
I looked a little crazy for sure. It's like I looked a little crazy, and I was just really angry. And that's really where the meditation came in for me.
We were totally out of balance.
With how we were working. That's true.
The work-life balance was
Really
all work.
no play, and
And
so that meant like no
What's
fun.
the saying?
All work-
It make you a dull girl.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Oh, a
is
dull
how
boy.
it goes.
What about Jill?
Well, Jill could be a dull girl.
Yeah. So now balance is it where it's at. We're listening to the birds, and we're going to sign off. If you listened all this way, thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're so appreciative.
Hope you had a really blessed day. Peace.